When my son said I was a burden, I didn't cry. I thought maybe that word had been sitting in his heart for a long time. Maybe he just didn't say it until that day. I smiled instead. It wasn't because I wasn't hurt, I was, but because crying in front of your own child feels like you're begging for love. I didn't want to beg. I just wanted peace. My name is Clara Mae Johnson, and I turned 70 this past spring. I live in a small town in Georgia, in the same house where my late husband, Robert, and I raised our only son, David. After Robert passed away 10 years ago, I told myself I'd never leave this house. Every corner held a memory: the kitchen where Robert used to hum while making coffee, the porch where we'd sit on summer evenings, and the old swing that still creaked when the wind passed. But time changes things. David got married. He and his wife, Marcia, moved into this house 3 years ago after their apartment rent went too high. I didn't mind. I thought having them here would bring the house back to life. At first it did. I remember the laughter at the dinner table, the smell of Marcia's baking, and David sitting beside me, asking about old stories. I used to feel useful again, like I was part of something. But slowly, things changed. Marcia started working longer hours, and David spent more time on his phone or watching TV. The conversations grew shorter. Sometimes I'd talk about small things, how the garden was doing or how the neighbor's cat had kittens, but nobody really listened. They weren't unkind, just distant. I could sense it in the way Marcia would sigh when she saw me sitting in the living room. Or how David would tell me, "Ma, you don't have to cook. We already ordered." I began spending more time in my room. I'd sit near the window watching the street outside, the kids playing, the mailman walking by, the sunset slowly painting the sky. It was quiet. Too quiet sometimes. In the evenings I made tea, 1 cup for me, 1 for the memory of Robert. I'd whisper to his picture on the wall, "They're good kids, but they don't talk much anymore." Some nights, I heard David and Marcia arguing softly in the kitchen. I didn't mean to listen, but old houses have thin walls. I'd hear my name sometimes: your mother, money, responsibility. Each time, my heart sank a little deeper. I started doing small chores to feel helpful. Folding their laundry, cleaning the porch, cooking dinner before they got home. Sometimes Marcia smiled and said, "Thank you, Mama Clara." But other times, she just nodded without looking up from her phone. One morning, I overheard her on a call with her friend. She said, "It's hard living with someone old. There's always something to worry about." Her words stayed in my chest like a stone. Still, I tried not to let it show. I kept my smile soft and my steps light. I didn't want to be in their way. A few weeks later, David came into my room. He looked tired, dark circles under his eyes, his shirt wrinkled. I asked if he wanted tea. He shook his head. He sat on the edge of my bed and said, "Ma, you've done enough for us. Maybe it's time you think about a senior place. A nursing home. Somewhere nice." My hand froze. The cup I was holding shook slightly. I looked at him, trying to read his face. Was he serious? He continued, "You'll have company there, people your age. You won't feel lonely." I smiled, but it wasn't from joy. It was a way to keep my voice steady. "Do you feel I'm in the way, David?" I asked softly. He looked away. "It's not like that. It's getting hard. Marcia's stressed. I'm working 2 jobs. We can't keep up." I nodded. "I understand." But inside, something quiet broke. That night, I sat on the porch until the stars came out. The air was still, the crickets sang softly, and I felt the weight of 70 years settle in my bones. I remembered how I once held that same boy in my arms, teaching him to tie his shoes, bandaging his scraped knees. I remembered the nights I stayed up when he was sick, whispering prayers over his small body. And now, that same boy was telling me to find another home. But I didn't feel angry. I just felt empty. The next morning, I woke up early. I folded my favorite shawl, the floral one Robert bought me on our anniversary. I packed a small bag with clothes, my Bible, and a framed picture of Robert. When Marcia came downstairs, she looked surprised. "Where are you going, Mama Clara?" I smiled gently. "I'm just going to take a walk. Maybe visit an old friend." She nodded without saying much. As I stepped outside, the morning air felt cool against my skin. I walked slowly down the porch steps, listening to the wooden boards creak beneath my feet. I turned back for one last look at the house. It looked peaceful, too peaceful, like it didn't need me anymore. I whispered thank you for the memories and started walking toward the gate. Just then, I heard the sound of an engine. A car slowed down in front of the house, an old black sedan. The window rolled down, and I saw a familiar face. It was Henry, Robert's best friend from years ago. I hadn't seen him since the funeral. He smiled warmly. "Miss Clara May? You going somewhere?" I blinked, surprised. "Henry. Lord, it's been ages." He looked at my small bag and the tired lines on my face. Without asking too many questions, he said softly, "Get in, Clara. Let's go for a drive." I hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Sometimes, you don't need to plan your next step, life just shows it to you. As I got into the car, I glanced back one last time at the house, the porch swing, the quiet windows, and the home that once held my whole world. I didn't know what waited ahead. But for the first time in years, I felt a small spark of freedom. And maybe, just maybe, a new beginning. Henry's car moved slowly down the quiet road. The morning sun was still low, spreading a golden light across the houses and trees. I held my bag on my lap, looking out the window, feeling a strange mix of peace and sadness. Henry glanced at me from time to time. He didn't say much, and I appreciated that. Some people fill silence with words, but Henry always knew how to let silence breathe. After a few minutes, he said softly, "You still living in that old house, Clara?" I smiled faintly. "Up until this morning, yes." He looked at me again, eyebrows slightly raised. "You sayin' you walked out?" I nodded. It was time. The house didn't feel like mine anymore. Henry sighed. "That boy of yours, he never meant harm, I'm sure. But sometimes children forget who carried them through the storm." His words made my throat tighten. I looked down at my hands, wrinkled, thin, yet still steady. Maybe he didn't forget. Maybe life just got heavy. Henry didn't push further. He just nodded and kept driving. We drove past fields and little grocery stores, the kind that still had old signs fading under the sun. The wind through the window felt soft on my face, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I could breathe. Henry lived about 30 minutes away, in a small white house near the edge of town. When we arrived, he helped me out of the car. The porch smelled like fresh coffee and pine wood. "Come on in, Clara," he said, holding the door open. Inside, the air felt warm and gentle. There were framed pictures on the wall, his children, his late wife, and old church gatherings. "You still keep everything like it was," I said quietly. He smiled. "It's the only way I remember them." He led me to a chair by the window. "You sit here. I'll get us something to eat." When he came back with toast and tea, I couldn't help but smile. "You still make tea too strong, Henry." He chuckled. "Ain't tea if you can see the bottom of the cup." We both laughed, a small laugh but a real one. It felt good to laugh again. As the day passed, Henry told me about his daughter, Lisa, who lived in Atlanta now, and how he spent most of his days fixing old furniture. "Keeps my hands busy," he said. I told him about David and Marcia. I didn't speak badly of them, I just said things had become quiet at home. Henry listened the way good friends do, no judgment, just presence. That night, he showed me the guest room. The bed had a floral blanket and smelled faintly of lavender. If you need a place for a few days, he said, you can stay here. No rent, no talk of burden. The word burden hit something inside me, but I smiled and said, thank you, Henry. I'll only stay till I figure things out. He nodded. You take your time. That night, I couldn't sleep right away. The house was quiet, but not the lonely kind of quiet. It was peaceful. I could hear the faint sound of crickets outside, and somewhere in the distance, a dog barking softly. I lay there thinking about David, how he used to run to me after school, his backpack bouncing, his eyes full of joy. How he'd say, Mama, look what I made, holding a drawing or a paper airplane. I wondered when that boy had turned into a man who looked at me with tired eyes. Maybe I didn't see it happen because I was too busy missing the past. The next morning, I woke up early. The air smelled like dew and sunlight. I walked outside and sat on Henry's porch. He joined me with 2 cups of coffee. You always wake up this early, he asked. Old habits, I replied. Robert used to say the morning air was good for the soul. Henry nodded. Robert was a wise man. We sat in silence for a while. Then he said gently, you think David's worrying about you? I looked at the road ahead. If he is, he won't show it. He's got pride, same as his father had. Henry smiled faintly. And you got patience, same as you always had. I didn't answer. I just sipped my coffee and let the warmth fill me. Later that day, Henry's daughter Lisa called. He told her I was staying for a few days. Lisa asked to speak to me. Aunt Clara, she said over the phone. Daddy told me you're with him. It's so good to hear your voice. Her voice was kind and full of warmth. I smiled. It's good to hear yours too, baby. Lisa insisted I visit her in Atlanta sometime. You'd love it here. There's a senior center nearby, they have art classes, book readings, all kinds of things. I thanked her, but inside I thought, maybe later. I wasn't ready to start somewhere new yet. My heart still belonged to that little house, no matter how quiet it had become. That afternoon, Henry and I worked in his garden. He planted tomatoes and I trimmed the roses. The sun was warm on my back, and for the first time in months, I felt useful again. You got a green thumb, Clara, Henry said. I smiled. Robert always said the same thing. He looked at me kindly. You talk about Robert like he's still right here. I looked up at the sky. Maybe he is. Maybe love never really leaves, it just changes shape. Henry nodded, his eyes soft. You always did have a way with words. Days passed, slow and gentle. Each morning, Henry made coffee and I cooked breakfast. We talked about old times, church picnics, neighborhood gossip, how gas used to cost 30 cents. But deep inside, I still thought about David. Not with anger, just worry. I wondered if he noticed my room was empty. If he missed my cooking or the way I folded his shirts just right. Sometimes, I imagined him waking up and calling, Ma, only to realize I was gone. And then I'd feel a sharp ache in my chest, not because I wanted to go back, but because I wanted him to remember love before regret took its place. One evening, Henry and I sat on the porch, watching the sun dip low. He handed me a letter. It came for you, he said. My hands trembled a little as I opened it. It was from David. Ma, it began, I don't know if you'll read this, but I hope you're safe. I didn't mean what I said. I just felt tired and lost. Marcia and I had a fight that day, and I took it out on you. I shouldn't have. You didn't deserve that. I paused, the paper shaking slightly in my hands. My eyes filled with tears I didn't expect. He continued, I know I hurt you. If you come home, I promise things will be different. But if you don't want to, I'll understand. I just need you to know I love you. I pressed the letter to my chest. For a long moment, I couldn't speak. Henry watched quietly. He wrote to you, he said softly. That's something. I nodded. Yes. That's something. That night, I sat by the window thinking. I wasn't sure if I should go back or stay. I didn't want to return just because I was missed for a moment. I wanted it to mean something deeper. I whispered a small prayer. Lord, show me what's right. Help me do what brings peace, not pain. The moonlight fell across the floor, gentle and pale. I felt Robert's presence again, like he was sitting beside me, whispering, "You've done your part, Clara. The rest will come in time." And I believed him. That night was calm, but I knew the story wasn't over yet. Because forgiveness isn't just a word, it's a journey, one that takes courage to start and love to finish. And I was ready to walk that road, no matter how long it took. The morning after that bitter argument was quiet. Too quiet. The house that once echoed with laughter now sounded like a hollow shell. I moved slowly around the kitchen, making breakfast out of habit more than hunger. The smell of eggs and coffee filled the air, but no one came downstairs. I used to wake up early every morning when my children were little. I'd hum old church songs while making pancakes, and they would run around the kitchen, giggling, fighting over who got the biggest one. Now, it was just me, standing in the same kitchen, humming the same tune, but the laughter was gone. When Marcus finally came down, he didn't say good morning. He just grabbed his coffee and nodded at me, his eyes avoiding mine. "You don't have to cook for me, Mama," he muttered. I forced a smile. "It's all right. It's what I do." He sighed. "We can't keep doing this. You staying here, it's not working." My heart clenched. "What do you mean by that, baby?" "I mean, you need a plan," he said, putting down his mug. "You can't live here forever. You need to, contribute. Or maybe find a place where you'll be more comfortable." Those words, "find a place," echoed like a slap. He was talking about a nursing home. Again. I looked at him, this man I had carried for 9 months, fed, clothed, and prayed over for years. And he was asking me to go live somewhere else because I was too much. I wanted to scream, to ask him how he could be so cold, but instead, I said softly, "Marcus, I'm your mother. I gave you everything I had. I don't need luxury, just a little space to live and love my family." He rubbed his forehead. "Mama, it's not about that. It's just, things are hard. We have bills, the kids, my work. You don't understand how stressful it's been." "I understand," I said quietly. "But I thought family meant we carry each other's burdens." He didn't respond. He just walked out, leaving me standing in the kitchen with a heart that felt too heavy for my chest. Later that day, I heard voices from the living room. It was Marcus and his wife, Dana. They didn't know I was near the hallway. Dana's voice was low but sharp. "She's making things harder, Marcus. We don't have space, we don't have money, and she's not even trying to help. I told you we can't do this forever." Marcus said nothing. "I mean, what's next?" Dana continued. "We start paying her bills too. She's retired, but she's not helpless. There are jobs out there for seniors. Even grocery stores hire greeters. Let her do something." I stood frozen. My throat tightened and my eyes burned. I never wanted to be a burden. I never asked for anything except love and a place to belong. But hearing my daughter-in-law speak of me like I was some leftover problem to be solved, that broke something deep inside. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at an old picture on my dresser. It was Marcus, maybe 5 years old, wearing a red cap, holding a small toy truck. He used to say, "Mama, when I grow up, I'll buy you a big car so you don't have to walk anywhere." And now, the same boy was telling me to find a job so I wouldn't have to live under his roof. A week passed. I started going out for walks in the morning, just to breathe. The park near our house was peaceful, children playing, birds singing, couples jogging together. But I often sat alone on the same bench thinking about life. I met a woman there one morning. Her name was Eleanor, around my age, wearing a bright yellow scarf and carrying a bag full of books. "You come here often?" she asked with a smile. "Yes," I said softly. "It's quiet here. I like the peace." "Peace is good," she said, sitting beside me. "I come here to get away from my daughter sometimes." We both laughed gently, the kind of laugh that hides pain underneath. We started talking, and before I knew it, I was telling her everything, about Marcus, about Dana, about how I felt invisible in my own home. Eleanor listened, nodding, sometimes sighing deeply. "I know exactly what you mean," she said. "I lived with my son for a year after my husband passed. One day he said the same thing, that I was becoming too much. I packed up that night." "Where did you go?" I asked. She smiled sadly. "A friend helped me find a small room to rent. Not much, but it's mine. Peace is better than being unwanted." Her words stayed with me long after she left. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The moonlight touched my wrinkled hands, hands that had cooked, cleaned, held, and healed for years. And now, those same hands were empty. Maybe Eleanor was right. Maybe peace was better than staying where you're not wanted. The next morning, I woke up early and started cleaning my room. I folded my clothes neatly, packed a small bag, and placed a few old photos on top. Each picture told a story: birthdays, graduations, family dinners. Memories that now felt distant. When Marcus came downstairs, he saw my bag by the door. "Mama, what are you doing?" I smiled softly. "You told me to find a place where I'd be comfortable. I think I should try." He froze. "Wait, I didn't mean." "It's okay," I said gently. "I understand. I really do." His face softened with guilt. "Mama, please don't take it that way. You know I love you." "I know, baby," I said. "But sometimes love gets lost between words and pride. You don't have to explain." I hugged him. He didn't hug back right away, but when he did, it felt tight, desperate. "I just need some time," he whispered. I smiled through the tears. "So do I." I picked up my bag and walked outside. The morning air was crisp. The world looked quiet, but inside me, everything was spinning. I walked down the street slowly, not sure where I was going. Every step felt heavy but freeing at the same time. Then, just as I reached the corner, a car slowed down beside me. It was old, light blue, with a kind face behind the wheel. It was Eleanor. "Well, look at you," she said, smiling through the window. "You ready to start a new chapter?" I stared at her, surprised. "I didn't even tell you I was leaving." She laughed softly. "Sometimes, we just know when a soul is ready to move." I felt something in my chest, a mix of fear and peace. "Get in," she said kindly. "Let's go find you a place where you can breathe." I looked back at the house one last time. The home I built. The son I raised. The walls that had heard both laughter and pain. And then I whispered, "Goodbye, baby." I got into Eleanor's car, and as we drove off, the morning sun rose higher, touching the road ahead with a soft golden glow. For the first time in a long while, I felt free, scared, yes, but free. Eleanor drove us through quiet streets lined with oak trees. The sun peeked through the branches, painting golden patches on the road. For a while, neither of us spoke, just the sound of the old car humming and birds singing somewhere in the distance. I stared out the window, watching people hurry to work, mothers walking their children to school, couples holding hands. Life was moving on, as it always does, no matter who stays behind or who walks away. Eleanor finally broke the silence. "You did the right thing, you know." I smiled faintly. "Sometimes doing the right thing still hurts like sin." She nodded. "Pain don't always mean wrong. Sometimes it's the proof you've been alive and brave enough to change." Her words sank deep. Brave. I hadn't felt brave in years. I had felt tired, small, and forgotten, but brave. No. Yet, sitting in that car, leaving everything behind, maybe I was. We stopped at a small house near the edge of town. The paint was chipped, the porch creaked, but the flowers in the front yard were blooming wild and bright. This used to belong to my cousin, Eleanor said. She passed last year, and her son rents it out cheap. 1 bedroom, 1 bath, small kitchen, nothing fancy but peaceful. I stepped out, the warm wind brushing against my face. For the first time in a long while, I felt air. Free air. Not the kind you breathe because you must, but the kind that reminds you you're still here. Inside, the place was quiet. Dusty sunlight spilled through the window, landing on a small table and 2 wooden chairs. I ran my fingers across the old counter, feeling the grooves of time. "I'll take it," I whispered. Eleanor smiled. "I figured you would." She stayed for tea that evening, and we talked about everything, our past, our families, our mistakes. I told her about my husband, God rest his soul, and how Marcus was my only child. "He was my whole world," I said softly. "Every dream I had was tied to him." Eleanor nodded slowly. "That's what mothers do. We give everything, thinking love will be enough to protect us. But sometimes, love needs distance to survive." That night, after she left, I sat on the small bed in my new home. There was no sound except the ticking of a clock somewhere, and the soft rustle of the trees outside. I cried then, not from sadness alone but from release. For 70 years, I had lived for others, for my parents, my husband, my son. This was the first night I was living for me. Days passed. I began to settle into a new rhythm. Mornings were quiet, afternoons were filled with walks or reading, and evenings were for tea on the porch. I even started volunteering at the local community center, helping kids with homework, sometimes baking for their small events. They called me Miss Mabel. And for the first time, that name didn't sound like a burden. The children there filled my empty spaces. Their laughter reminded me of Marcus when he was small, when life was simple and love didn't come with conditions. One afternoon, as I was helping a young girl named Jasmine with her math homework, she asked, "Miss Mabel, do you have kids?" I paused, then smiled. "I do. 1 son." "Where is he?" she asked innocently. I looked out the window. "He's figuring out life. Just like we all are." She nodded, satisfied with the answer, and went back to her notebook. But inside, something stirred. Was Marcus figuring life out, or losing himself in it? Weeks turned into months. Eleanor and I became close friends. Every Sunday, we'd go to church together. The congregation there was small but warm. The pastor, a kind man with a deep voice, once said during his sermon, "Forgiveness doesn't mean you forget what they did. It means you remember but you choose peace anyway." That line stayed with me for days. That night, I wrote Marcus a letter. Not to scold, not to guilt, but to tell him the truth, my truth. "Dear Marcus, I know life hasn't been easy, and I don't blame you. You have your own family, your responsibilities, your worries. But I want you to remember something: a mother's love doesn't disappear when she leaves the house. It travels with her, through every sunrise and every quiet night. I'm doing fine, baby. I'm learning to smile again, learning to live again. And I pray you do the same. Love. Mama." I folded the letter and mailed it the next morning. I didn't expect a reply. I just wanted my words to find him, like a gentle knock on his heart. One chilly evening, maybe 2 months later, I sat on my porch sipping tea when headlights appeared down the dusty road. The car slowed, then stopped in front of my house. My heart skipped a beat. It was Marcus. He got out slowly, looking nervous, older somehow, softer around the eyes. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the wind rustling through the trees. Then he said quietly, "You found yourself a nice place, Mama." I smiled faintly. It's not much, but it's peaceful. He looked around, his voice trembling. I got your letter. I nodded. I figured you might. He took a deep breath. Mama, I'm sorry. I was wrong. I was stressed and I took it out on you. You didn't deserve that. Tears welled up in my eyes. We all say things we don't mean, Marcus. Life gets heavy sometimes. He shook his head. No. You were right. Family is supposed to carry each other's burdens. And I forgot that. You carried me all your life, and when it was my turn, I failed you. I reached out and held his hand. His palm was rough, familiar, trembling. Baby, I whispered, you didn't fail me. You just forgot who you were for a moment. We all do that sometimes. He broke down then, his shoulders shaking, his voice breaking into sobs. I pulled him close, held him like I did when he was a little boy afraid of thunderstorms. I missed you, Mama, he cried. I missed you too, I said softly, stroking his hair. But I never stopped loving you. We stood there for a long time, the two of us under the fading evening light, a mother and son finding their way back to each other. After that night, Marcus started visiting every weekend. Sometimes he brought his kids, sometimes just himself. Dana never came, and that was fine. Time has its own way of mending what's meant to be. He helped me fix the porch steps one Saturday, laughing when he fell through a loose board. I made him cornbread and sweet tea, and for a moment, it felt like the old days again. One evening, as the sun dipped low, he said, you know, I kept thinking about that day, when you walked out. I was mad at you for leaving. I smiled. And now? Now I realize you had to, he said quietly. If you hadn't left, I would have never learned what love really means. I looked at him, my heart full. Sometimes love needs distance to be seen clearly, baby. He nodded, tears glistening in his eyes. Months passed peacefully. I still lived in that small house, still volunteered, still met Eleanor for tea every Thursday. Life wasn't grand, but it was mine. One Sunday afternoon, Marcus showed up with something behind his back. Close your eyes, he said. I laughed. Lord, you're too old for surprises. Just do it, Mama. When I opened them, there were tears instantly. It was a framed photo, the one of him as a little boy wearing a red cap, holding his toy truck. Underneath, he had written in gold letters. To the woman who carried me, even when I forgot how to carry her. I pressed it to my chest, unable to speak. I love you, Mama, he whispered. I love you too, baby, I said, voice trembling. More than words ever could. That night, as I sat by the window, I looked out at the same road where Eleanor's car had once stopped. That moment had changed everything. I thought leaving would break me, but it became the start of my healing. I thought my son had lost his love for me, but he had only forgotten how to show it. Sometimes, life pulls us apart just so we can find our way back with clearer eyes and softer hearts. As the stars filled the sky, I whispered a quiet prayer. For every mother who feels forgotten, may she find peace in her own strength. And for every child who once turned away, may they find the courage to turn back home. I smiled through the tears, watching the porch light glow softly in the night. Maybe, after all the years, I wasn't a burden. Maybe, I was just a blessing that took time to be seen again. And that realization, that quiet, gentle truth, felt like the warmest sunrise after a long, cold night.